Hello everyone, welcome to EPG Pathshala Program in Linguistics. Today we will discuss the module Language Use and Language Attitude, first part from the course Sociolinguistics. I am Reshma Jacob from Center of Linguistics, JNU. I am speaking on behalf of Dr. Aditi Ghosh of Calcutta University. The study of language use and language attitude has been among the most frequently undertaken studies in the field of language change, language shift and language maintenance. Why we do that is because a careful investigation of the pattern of use of a language or a language variety in different spheres of life, along with an analysis of the beliefs and values associated with those languages, can help us predict the future course of those languages in terms of its survival. So precisely the pattern of language use can predict the survival of that language. Even though the study of language use and language attitude is most consistently and formally used for understanding multilingual situations and language diversity, the study of language attitude has been prevalent since the early years of sociolinguistic studies and applied to variations within a single language as well. Laboff's work in New York City, which happened in 1966, and Laboff's study in Martha's Vineyard in 1963 are examples of such studies. So these studies formally accessed feelings about language and looked into its impact on language change. By now, all of you must be familiar with Laboff's studies. His work in Martha's Vineyard demonstrated that the occurrence of the non-standard local variants of diphthongs in words like house, out, right, light, etc. is driven by an unconscious inclination of speakers to project the islander's identity and to distinguish themselves from the summer visitors who came from mainland United States to spend holidays on the island. So as the summer visitors can be identified by their standardized pronunciation, the islanders adopted their local non-standard pronunciation. So that is the centralized diphthong, and they used this as a marker of their distinct identity. In the New York City study, the variant pronunciations of several phonetic variables, including the loss of preconsonantal and word final R in words like car, for, dart, etc., were seen to be motivated by a desire to emulate the speech style of the higher social class. So study of language attitude is also frequently used in the field of second language learning. So in second language learning, in L2 learning, language attitude is seen as a positive or negative attitude towards a language. So this positive or negative attitude towards the second language will determine if the learner will actually learn the language or not. For example, if the speaker has a negative attitude towards the given language, he or she might not be interested in learning it or may not want to put so much effort into learning the language. On the contrary, if he or she has a positive attitude towards learning that second language, they'll put more interest or they'll put more effort in learning that language, which will result in learning the language and using the language efficiently. So as we already mentioned, in second language learning, language attitude is seen as a positive or negative attitude, which can greatly influence the proficiency of the language learner. Study of language use as a part of human behavior and the study of attitude are inherently interconnected. So the study of language use and study of attitude is inherently interconnected. Attitude studies are integral part of social psychology. As Allport, one of the early proponents of the social psychology, remarked that attitude quote unquote attitude, though not observed directly, must be accepted as a real and substantial ingredient in human nature to account for the consistency of any individual's behavior or for the stability of the society. So according to Alport, attitude is not observed directly, but it is accepted as a real and substantial ingredient in human nature to account for the consistency of any individual's behavior or for the stability of the society. Following this definition, it can be said that attitudes govern human behavior in different spheres of life, and the only way to study attitude is by studying human behavior as they reflect attitude. So, on the other hand, attitude towards something stem from the observation and evaluation of human behavior on the basis of ideology of correctness or acceptability of those human behaviors. We'll discuss more about this in the next module. So, precisely what we are trying to convey is that behavior stimulates attitude. Okay, attitude is nothing inherent, but it is stimulated by our behavior. The study of language attitude is connected to that of language use, as it is the attitude towards a language that guides the language behavior and language choice of the speaker, and which in turn affects their patterns of use of a language. The choice of language for use in different spheres of life shapes a language attitude towards those languages as well as the speakers of that particular language community. So our language attitude is, as we already mentioned, is developed by, on the basis of our observation of that language use by its language speakers, and such an observation or such an attitude may influence our judgment of the users of language around us, and this in turn construct their social status, their perceived identity, and it may affect their everyday life. So issues related to language use and attitude affects us in various ways. For example, in our everyday experiences, that positive or negative attitude towards languages or accents permeates almost the entire society and certain languages or language varieties for that matter, and it also influences its speakers. Okay, as in based on the language attitude, the speakers are held in higher esteem or in lower esteem. So if the attitude towards a language is high, or so if we have a positive attitude towards a particular language, its speakers are held in higher esteem than others. Similarly, if we have a negative attitude towards a language, then its speakers are also given a low esteem. So the positive attitude towards a language also results in the greater spread of those languages, because people think it gives them a little prestige, or it is a privilege to use such high languages, and hence it helps in the spreading of that language. So the positive attitude towards a language also results in the greater spread of those languages, and the speakers of such dominant languages are given better respect and often better social and economic prospects. On the contrary, the non-dominant languages and their speakers are often associated with lower social status, or lack of education, inefficiency, and lack of intelligence. Linguistic and cultural stereotype are formed based on these attitudes. An extreme positive or negative attitude towards a group contributes in forming prejudices and may even generate interlinguistic or intercultural conflict. For example, in case of language varieties, the non-standard varieties are often wrongly seen as incorrect, impure, or corrupted versions of the standard language, and the speakers of these non-standard varieties are often seen as ignorant or uneducated. So by which we mean that such a negative attitude or such a negative or a positive attitude towards a language will result in forming prejudices against that language. In this module, we'll discuss the significance of language use, language use studies in social linguistics and for multilingual situations in general. The study of language use is based on the understanding that in a multilingual situation, the choice of language is systematic rather than arbitrary. So what we are trying to assert in this module, what we are trying to convey is that the selection of language in a particular situation by an individual is not arbitrary, but it is systematic. The competent speakers make conscious or unconscious assessment of the social situations in which the interaction is taking place and select appropriate language or language variety from their linguistic repertoire that they feel is most compatible with the given situation. So an individual make a conscious or unconscious effort to choose or to understand the language situation, and they choose the language which is appropriate or which they think is the best for that particular language situation. So precisely the choice of language in a particular situation is mostly a conscious choice. The choice may be partially individual but is generally guided by social norms, as each competent member of linguistic community has a definite perception about proper usage of language in a given situation. Such an ability to choose the right language or language variety based on correct assessment of the social context or language situation and adhering to the existing socio-cultural norms is said to be part of our communicative competence as proposed by Delhams. So choosing the correct language in the correct situation or choosing a particular language in that particular situation by understanding the social context is known as communicative competence. So communicative competence is an ability that enables successful communication, and it also comprises of linguistic as well as socio-cultural competence. Let's now try to understand the concept of domain. Domains of language use can be understood as a cluster of characteristic situations around a prototypical theme which structures both the speaker's perception of the situation and their social behavior, including language choice. So the study of language choice in different situations therefore may reveal a general trend of language use in a multilingual situation and the relative prestige and vitality of the languages in a society. So if we try to study the language use in a particular situation, we'll understand the kind of prestige given to that language, or once we study the domains in which a language is used, we'll understand or high languages are used in formal or more prestigious domains such as during formal interview, a bureaucratic meeting or an academic lecture. So we always know which variety of the language is to be used in a particular situation. So we always use the high variety or the standard variety of a language in a very formal meeting or while giving an academic lecture. So languages that are generally chosen for interaction in family or with friends are usually the local vernaculars or our native languages with relatively less prestige or sometimes marked as a low variety of language. We do not interchange these varieties. So all of us as speakers of these languages know which language to use in which situation. So we never confuse where to use which language. We always know the specific domains associated with these language varieties. So precisely we do not interchange these varieties, as in we do not talk so formally with our friends and we do not use our local vernacular in a formal television interview. A study of such usages across different social criteria including age groups may indicate an ongoing language shift in the community. So such study of language use in certain domains, in particular domains, will help us in understanding the ongoing language shift in a community. Systematic study of language usage in different domains can be tracked back to Fishman and Ferguson. Fishman expanded the notion of diglossia, which was proposed by Ferguson in 1959. It says how in some specific cases the high and low varieties of languages are functionally distributed in a societies in such a definite manner that one variety is never used in a social situation in which the other is used. So we already mentioned this earlier, that we know where to use which variety of language. So as we already mentioned, we do not use a very formal language while we are conversing with our family or friends, or we may not use the local vernacular in a public meeting in a very formal context. This distribution is different from the common standard and dialect distribution, which may seem similar, since the standard variant is also used in more formal situations, and the dialects or the non-standard variants are used in less formal situations. Ferguson gave examples of 4 specific linguistic situations, that is Arabic, Swiss German, Haitian Creole and Greek, where the high and low varieties of a language are functionally distributed in a society in such a definite manner that one variety is never used in the social situation in which the other is used. The diglossic distribution of the H and L, the high and low varieties of languages, differs from the standard and dialect distribution in 2 main aspects. First, the diglossic distribution is much more crucial and more socially imperative than the standard and dialect distribution in the respective domains of use. For example, no competent speakers of the language would use the high variety in situations which demand the low variety, or no one will use a low variety in a particular situation which demands high variety. And this happens in case of diglossia. In case the speakers mix up the domains, then it would be assumed that the speaker is not a native speaker of the language, and they may even become an object of ridicule. People may make fun of them for mixing up the domains, or for using inappropriate variety of language. In standard and dialect situations, the standard variety may be used in the formal as well as less formal situations without comparable problems, especially for one section of people for whom the H variety of the standard variety, H variety is their mother tongue. The high variety of diglossia often has to be learned by all members of the society. So we do not acquire the H variety, we'll have to learn the H variety. So unlike standard languages, we have to learn the H high variety of a language. Secondly, unlike standard and dialect situation, the diglossic distribution is a relatively stable situation and remains unchanged for a long time, and this may even be stable for even centuries. From the point of view of language maintenance, the most significant contribution made in this theory is that it demonstrates the possibility of a systematic, stable and clear-cut compartmentalization of language varieties across different domains of use. So as we already mentioned, choice of languages may be influenced by a number of non-linguistic factors, including situation of a language use. So Fishman in 1965 extended the concept of diglossia in bilingual situations, where such distribution is applied to different languages instead of language varieties. Such an extension or extended diglossia helped in understanding the different types of relationship between languages in multilingual situations. Fishman proposes a distinction between diglossia and bilingualism. Bilingualism as opposed to diglossia, appears in situations where the functional distribution of respective languages is less rigid and less socially determined and relatively more dependent on individual source. So, bilingualism, unlike diglossia, appears in situations where the functional distribution of respective languages is less rigid and less socially determined and relatively more dependent on individual choice. Fishman suggests that diglossia is a subject of inquiry for the sociologist, whereas bilingualism is a subject of the psychologist. According to him, in a society with multiple languages, there can be four possible types of situation. So, the first situation is where there is both bilingualism and diglossia. The second situation is they have diglossia but no bilingualism, and the third situation is where the situation with bilingualism but there is no diglossia, and the fourth situation is with neither bilingualism nor diglossia. So these are the four possible types of situations. And since diglossia is a stable situation, a diglossia like distribution between high and low languages may ensure survival of the non-dominant low languages, as it involves a stable usage in certain restricted societal compartments. On the contrary, in case of bilingualism, the domain-based distribution is not maintained. Two or more languages compete for use in the same situation, and mostly the high language acquires the power. So, in case of bilingualism, the domain-based distribution is not maintained, and so in case of bilingualism, there are two or more languages that compete for use in same situation, and in such a situation, it is mostly the high language which acquires the power. And this may signal a shift in language use and may even cause an eventual endangerment or death of the non-dominant language. So, if everyone preferred to use the high variety of language, and if no one ends up using the non-dominant languages, it may result in the endangerment or death of the non-dominant language. Therefore, the main significance of a diglossic situation in a bilingual society is in establishing language usage and ensuring maintenance of the low language. So, it is not the language shift that will help in maintaining the language. You will have to, the speakers of a language community must ensure the maintenance of the low variety as well. A study of domain-based language usage helps us to identify the tendency of a community going through a language shift. Also, we can find out if the language is being maintained in its traditional domains. A number of studies are conducted in multilingual societies to determine the level of language usage and ascertain the vitality of language. We may now discuss some of such studies in Indian context. Fishman's discussion on domain analysis in his seminal work "Who Speaks What Language to Whom and When" is accepted as the methodological framework for analysis of language use studies. So, as we have already mentioned, domain analysis is an important method to investigate language use. For example, in the Indian context, Parashar's work study in 1980 among educated bilinguals in Hyderabad and Secunderabad indicated diglossia-like distribution between mother tongue and English, where the mother tongue dominated only the home domains. And another recent study among the non-dominant language speakers in Kolkata indicates that not only the mother tongue is restricted in the home domains, but there is a notable intergeneration shift within the home domain. So methods to study language use or language choice mostly involve analysis of self-reports of the participants about their language usage in different domains, situations, and with different interlocutors. So such studies usually use a structured questionnaire for the respondents to report their language choice and language use. These studies are used extensively to investigate language vitality, language maintenance, and language shift in minority language situations, especially among migrant communities. Language use studies are mostly conducted with a simultaneous study of language attitude of the same community. This is because while the language use studies reflect the trends of usage and preferences, the attitude studies help us interpret those trends. So language use studies reflects the trends of usage and preferences, and the study of language attitude will help us to interpret those trends. Language attitude, as we will discuss in the next module, can be understood as a favorable or unfavorable preconception towards a language and sometimes towards speakers of those language. So attitude towards bilingualism affects not just the language use pattern but also the language policy of the individual or the institution. For example, an unfavorable attitude towards code switching disapproves mixing of languages. So we will discuss more about this in the next module. In this module, we discussed about the study of language use and attitude as a part of sociolinguistic inquiry into status of languages in multilingual situations. We also discussed the relevance of studying the pattern of language use. As discussed earlier, study of language use in different domains can help us identify the trend of language shift or language maintenance. Thus, we can conclude by saying that in order to determine the vitality index of a language or to predict the survival of the same, the study of language use is one of the most significant study in the field of sociolinguistics. Thank you.